What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Tonight we have 4 stories, all of them submitted by real people on Reddit, people who claim these things actually happened to them. Whether you believe them or not, well, by the end of tonight, you might not have a choice. Get comfortable. Turn off the lights if you're feeling brave, and let's get into it. Story 1. The Man Who Watched from the Tree Line. I want you to picture a house at the end of a long gravel road. Not a sketchy neighborhood, not some abandoned farmhouse, a perfectly normal house in a rural part of Tennessee. The kind of place where your nearest neighbor is about a quarter-mile away. That's where a guy named Derek grew up, and for most of his childhood, he loved it. The space, the quiet, the woods behind the property that stretched on for what felt like forever. He told this story in a Reddit thread about unexplained experiences from childhood. He said for years he convinced himself there was a rational explanation, but as an adult, the more he thought about it, the less rational it became. It started when Derek was around 9 years old, late summer, the kind of evening where it stays light until almost 9 at night and kids stay outside as long as they can before their parents drag them in. Derek was playing alone in the backyard. His older brother was at a friend's house. His parents were inside watching TV with the windows open. He was kicking a soccer ball around near the edge of the yard, where the grass stopped and the woods began. There was maybe 30 feet between him and the tree line. And that's when he saw it. A man, standing completely still just inside the tree line. Not moving, not saying anything, just standing there, watching him. Derek said the first thing he felt wasn't fear, it was confusion. Because the man looked completely normal at first glance, dark clothing, average build, standing upright. Derek actually thought it might be a neighbor cutting through the property or something, so he just kind of stared back. But then he noticed the man hadn't blinked, hadn't shifted his weight, hadn't done anything that a normal person standing in the woods would naturally do. He was just perfectly, unnervingly still. Derek took a few steps toward the house, keeping his eyes on the man the whole time. The man didn't move, didn't follow, just stood there. Derek went inside and told his mom. She came out with him to look, and by then, nobody was there. His mom figured it was a deer or a shadow, the way parents do. She told him not to worry about it and called him in for dinner. But it happened again. About 2 weeks later, same time of evening, Derek was outside again. And there he was, same spot, same posture, same unblinking stillness. This time, Derek ran inside immediately without looking away, and he told his dad. His dad went out there, walked all the way to the tree line and a little bit into the woods. Nothing. No footprints in the soft earth near the trees, no broken branches, nothing. His parents started to think Derek had an overactive imagination, and Derek started to second-guess himself too. Maybe he was seeing things. Maybe the shadows at the edge of the woods played tricks in the fading light. Then his brother saw it. Derek's brother was 14 at the time, old enough that nobody was going to accuse him of imagining things. He came in from the backyard one evening white as a sheet and told their parents there was a man standing in the woods watching the house. Their dad went out again. Nothing. After that, their parents took it more seriously. His dad walked the tree line every couple of days for the rest of the summer. He found something on one of those walks that he never really explained to Derek and his brother. He just said he found some things back there and told them both to stay out of the woods for the rest of the year. Derek never found out what his dad found. The sightings stopped after that summer, and they never talked about it as a family. It was one of those things that just kind of got swallowed up by time and silence. Here's the part that made people in the Reddit thread lose it. About 15 years later, Derek was back visiting his parents for the holidays. He was in his mid-20s by then. He and his dad were having a beer on the back porch one night, just the two of them, and Derek brought it up out of nowhere. Half expecting his dad to wave it off the way parents do with old childhood fears. But his dad got quiet, really quiet. And then he said, and Derek swore these were his exact words, "I know it was real. I saw him too, more than once. I just didn't want you boys to be scared." Derek asked what he found in the woods that time he walked the tree line. His dad took a long sip of his beer, stared out at the dark tree line and said, "Cigarette butts. Dozens of them, right at the spot where he said he stood. Someone had been standing there. A lot." Derek said neither of them said anything for a long time after that. He still doesn't know who it was, or how many times that man stood there in the dark watching his family without any of them knowing, or what would have happened if any of them had walked into those woods at the wrong moment. The house sold years later. New family lives there now. Derek hopes they don't have a soccer ball.
This one comes from a woman named Priya who posted her story in a True Scary Stories subreddit about 2 years ago. It got tens of thousands of upvotes, and people in the comments said it was one of the most unsettling things they'd ever read. After you hear it, I think you'll understand why. Priya was a graduate student living alone in a one-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city in the Midwest. She lived there for about a year and a half, felt completely comfortable in the space, knew all her neighbors, had never had a single issue. The building was older, one of those places with thick walls and creaky floors and radiators that hissed in the winter. She liked it. The first thing she noticed was the smell. It was subtle at first. She described it as something slightly sour, like old laundry or food that had just started to turn. She cleaned the apartment top to bottom, checked the fridge, checked the trash. Everything was fine, but the smell kept coming back, mostly near the closet in the hallway, the one she used for coats and extra storage. She kept the door shut because the space was kind of a mess and she didn't want to deal with it. Then things started going missing. Small things. A granola bar she'd left on the kitchen counter, a bottle of water from the fridge, a pair of socks. She genuinely thought she was losing her mind. She started keeping a mental note of where she put things. Still, items disappeared. Then one night, she woke up at around 2 in the morning to a sound. She described it as a very soft, very slow creak, like one floorboard shifting under a careful footstep. She lay completely still and listened. The apartment was quiet. She told herself it was the building settling the way old buildings do, and she went back to sleep. But it happened again the next night, and the night after that. She started to feel uneasy in her own home, which was a feeling she hated and fought against. She checked the locks every night, checked the windows. Everything was always secure. About 3 weeks into this, she was getting ready in the morning and she opened the hallway closet to get her coat, and something felt off immediately. She couldn't explain exactly what. It just looked different, like things had been shifted around. One of the boxes on the floor had moved a few inches. The hanging coats were pushed slightly to one side. She closed the door of the closet, grabbed her phone, and stood there trying to talk herself out of what she was thinking. She called a friend and described everything: the smell, the missing items, the sounds, the closet. Her friend said the words that Priya hadn't let herself think yet. "Priya, someone is living in your closet." She called the police. She told them she thought someone might be in her apartment. They sent 2 officers over within about 20 minutes. They searched the apartment. In the back of the hallway closet, pushed behind the coats, behind a stack of boxes, they found a space that had been hollowed out. There were coats and blankets bunched up as a sort of bedding, an empty water bottle, one of Priya's, granola bar wrappers, and a small battery-powered lantern. Someone had been living there, sleeping there, eating her food, listening to her move around the apartment every single day, lying in that closet in the dark while she watched TV, ate dinner, got ready for bed. The person was gone. Nobody knows how they got in or how long they'd been there before Priya noticed. The landlord had no explanation. The locks had not been tampered with. Priya moved out the same week. She never went back, not even to get all her things. She had a friend pack them up for her.
The police never found the person. As far as anyone knows, they're still out there somewhere, maybe looking for the next dark closet, the next unsuspecting tenant who doesn't notice the smell right away.
Story 3. We found a trail camera in the woods behind our house. This story was posted by a guy named Todd and his wife Renee. They shared it together, going back and forth in the comments to fill in details. They'd moved into a house in upstate New York about a year before this happened. They had a few acres of property, backed by a stretch of state forest. They were private people, loved the quiet, thought they'd found their dream home. One afternoon in early October, Todd was walking the back edge of their property. He did this occasionally, just a walk to clear his head, check for downed trees or anything the deer had gotten into. He was maybe 200 yards from the house when he spotted something strapped to a tree. A trail camera. Now, trail cameras aren't unusual in wooded areas. Hunters use them constantly. But Todd knew for a fact that their property extended well past where he was standing, and hunting was not allowed in their area. He thought maybe a neighbor had accidentally placed it on the wrong side of a property line or something. He walked up to it. The camera was positioned at about chest height, pointed directly toward the house. Not pointed down a game trail, not angled toward a clearing where deer might pass. Pointed at the house. You could see the back of the house clearly through the trees from that angle, the back porch, the bedroom window, the back door. Todd pulled the camera off the tree and brought it inside. He and Renee sat down to look at the footage. What they found on that SD card is what gave this story its legs on Reddit. Hundreds of images. The camera had a motion sensor, and it had been triggered hundreds of times over what looked like several weeks. Most of the images were just the backyard, the porch, the windows, daytime shots, evening shots. But there were also images of people. Them, going about their lives completely unaware. Renee hanging laundry on the back porch, Todd grilling on a Saturday afternoon. Both of them visible through the sliding glass doors eating dinner. The resolution was good enough that their faces were clearly visible. And then there were the nighttime images. Several photos taken between 2 and 4 in the morning where the backyard was dark and quiet. In most of them, nothing moved, just the still house with a few lit windows. But in 3 of the photos, there was a figure. A person standing in the backyard, close enough to the back porch railing if they reached out, just standing there in the dark, still, watching. The night vision on the camera made everything look pale and ghostly. You could see the person was wearing dark clothing. You couldn't see a face. The dates on the images confirmed that the figure had been standing in their backyard on 3 separate nights in the past month. Todd called the police immediately. Detectives came out, took the camera as evidence, canvassed the area. They found the spot where the camera had been tied to the tree and confirmed it had been deliberately placed there. The camera itself had been purchased with cash, no way to trace it. They never identified who placed it. They never identified the figure in the nighttime photos. The detective told Todd and Renee, with what Todd described as a very careful and measured voice, that whoever placed the camera had been watching the house long enough to establish their routines. What he didn't say, but what was implied, heavily, was that whoever it was had been standing 30 feet from their back door on multiple occasions, in the dark, in the middle of the night, and they had never known. Todd and Renee installed a full security system, outdoor lights, and a fence within the following month. But Renee said something in the comments that I haven't been able to shake since I read it. Someone asked her if she still felt safe in the house, and she said, "I don't think about whether I feel safe anymore. I think about how long it was happening before we found the camera, and whether there's one we haven't found."
The last story tonight comes from a woman named Becca, and she posted it in a true crime adjacent subreddit. This one isn't supernatural. There are no figures in the woods or things that go bump in the night. What makes it scary is how real it is, how close it came to going very, very wrong. Becca had a job at a mid-sized insurance company. Standard office job, cubicles and coffee machines and all that. She'd worked there for about 3 years and knew most of her colleagues pretty well. Then a new guy started. I'll call him Garrett because Becca never used his name in her post. Garrett was immediately friendly, outgoing, charming, had a good sense of humor. He was in the IT department, so he had a legitimate reason to move around the office, work at different desks, interact with a lot of people. He and Becca became work friends fairly quickly, ate lunch together sometimes, had those easy conversations you have with people you see every day. A few months in, Garrett started getting more personal. He'd comment on what Becca was wearing, not in an overtly creepy way, more in that way where you could technically pass it off as a compliment, but something about it felt slightly off. He asked questions about her personal life, where she lived, whether she had a roommate, what gym she went to. Again, normal-seeming questions on the surface. She answered them honestly, the way you do with someone you think you know. Then one evening she was leaving the office and noticed Garrett sitting in his car in the parking lot. He was parked 2 spaces from hers, just sitting there, not on his phone, not doing anything. He waved when she walked past. She waved back and drove home, but spent the whole drive feeling weird about it without fully being able to explain why. She started noticing small things after that. Garrett seemed to know details she hadn't told him. He'd mentioned something about a restaurant in her neighborhood, not a famous one, just a local place, and she'd wonder how he knew she went there. He referenced her gym schedule once in passing. She let it go. People talk in offices, information travels. She told herself she was being paranoid. The thing that broke it open was an accident. A colleague of Becca's, a woman in accounting named Donna, was talking to her one afternoon and mentioned that Garrett had asked Donna some questions about Becca, had asked what Becca's last name was, whether she lived alone, what her schedule was like. Donna said she'd thought it was just friendly curiosity and had answered without thinking, but something about the conversation had bothered her afterward and she wanted to flag it for Becca. Becca went to HR that day. She laid out everything: the comments, the questions, the parking lot incident, what Donna told her. HR opened an internal investigation, and what they found knocked everyone sideways. Garrett had not been honest on his employment application. His name was real, but his references had been fabricated. The prior job he listed, a different company in a different city, had no record of him. The HR department there confirmed they'd never had an employee by that name. When confronted, he was terminated immediately. The company filed a report with the police. Here's the part that still makes Becca feel cold when she thinks about it. After the investigation opened, a detective reached out to her. He said they'd run Garrett's name and found some things. He couldn't share everything, he told her, but he strongly encouraged her to let someone know her daily routines, vary her schedule if possible, and ensure her home was properly locked. He didn't say why. He didn't use specific words, but Becca said the way he spoke to her, careful, deliberate, clearly choosing every word, told her everything she needed to know. Garrett was not just a weird coworker with boundary issues. Whatever his history was, whatever the detective found, it was bad enough that law enforcement felt she needed to take extra precautions. She said she moved apartments 2 months later, not because of anything specific that happened, just because the thought of someone knowing her address, where she lived alone, what her routine was, made staying there feel unbearable. She posted this story as a warning. Trust your instincts when something feels off, even if you can't name exactly what it is. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you're uncomfortable. You don't have to wait for something concrete before you say something, because sometimes when you find out what was concrete, it's too late to be glad you waited. 4 stories, 4 real people who had to figure out, often long after the fact, just how close something terrible had gotten to them. The man in the tree line who left dozens of cigarette butts like a scoreboard. The person who slept in a closet while someone lived their life just a few feet away. The trail camera that proved someone had been standing outside in the dark for weeks. And the coworker who wasn't who he said he was and might have been something far worse. Sleep well tonight. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching. Drop a comment if any of these got to you. And if you have your own story, something that happened to you that you've never fully been able to explain, you know where to find me. Stay safe out there.